Okay, so imagine like you're in Niagara Falls, right?
Right.
Back in the 1950s.
Yeah.
It's it's kind of an idyllic little working class neighborhood. Kids
Right.
are playing outside and everything feels pretty normal.
Mhm.
But underneath all that, there's this toxic secret brewing and it's called Love Canal.
Wow.
And you've given us some sources about this whole thing,
Yeah.
this environmental disaster.
Right.
And we're going to take a deep dive into how this like dream of a utopian city turned into a total nightmare.
Yeah.
What impact it had and, the brave individuals who fought for justice.
It's a story that I think resonates even today as we're grappling with, the long-term consequences of industrial pollution.
For sure.
Love Canal became like this turning point in environmental awareness, and,
Yeah.
and it led to landmark legislation like the Superfund Act.
Right.
But even with all that, the fight for environmental justice continues in communities all over the world.
Yeah, no, totally. And this is like a really good example of that.
Yeah.
So we have this guy, William T. Love, this
Right.
entrepreneur, and he envisions this grand canal connecting the upper and lower Niagara rivers
Yeah.
and creating this utopian city powered by hydroelectricity.
Yeah, very ambitious.
Super ambitious.
Yes, but it ultimately failed.
Yeah.
Economic downturns and changing technologies kind of left the canal unfinished.
Wow.
And it basically became a scar on the landscape.
A scar on the landscape.
Yeah.
And I mean, and a pretty convenient dumping ground, right?
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah.
The Hooker Chemical Company started using this abandoned canal to dispose of their chemical waste in the 1940s.
Oh.
And for over a decade, they filled it with thousands of tons of toxic waste,
Oh my gosh.
including this particularly nasty insecticide called Merex.
Merex.
Yeah, it was designed to control fire ants.
Okay.
But studies later linked it to liver cancer and reproductive issues.
Wow.
Imagine the irony of failed utopia becoming this breeding ground for this invisible monster.
It's chilling to think about. And even more so when you realize that they actually covered up the canal, right?
Yeah.
And a whole neighborhood sprung up around it.
They did.
They even built a school right on top of it.
Yeah, it's
Crazy.
it's a stark example of how short-term economic interests can sometimes override these long-term environmental concerns.
Totally.
Niagara Falls was so reliant on the chemical industry
All right.
that for many residents, like, the pungent odor of chemicals wasn't a warning sign.
Right.
It was the smell of money.
The smell of money.
Yeah.
It's kind of like makes you wonder, right? Have you ever lived in a place where a dominant industry really kind of shaped the whole culture
Yeah,
so much that they just overlook the risks?
absolutely.
It's a question worth pondering, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
And in the case of Love Canal, the early warning signs were kind of subtle,
They were.
almost easy to dismiss. Like residents noticed strange things,
Yeah.
these fire rocks that would just ignite spontaneously,
Wow.
creek sticks turning black.
It's like the environment was trying to send a message.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But those messages were largely ignored.
Yeah.
And this brings us to Eileen Voorhees,
Right.
who in 1960 stumbled on this horrifying discovery in her basement.
Yes, Eileen found this black goo
Oh my gosh.
seeping through her basement walls, accompanied by this strong chemical odor.
Oh gosh.
But her husband, a Hooker employee himself,
Wow.
dismissed it as harmless.
Oh no.
He even joked that it was probably just extra vitamins for their garden.
Oh my God.
Little did they know this was just the tip of the iceberg.
Wow.
Yeah.
So they were really not worried about it at all.
Nope. Yeah, it's like a classic case of what psychologists call cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
When people are faced with information that contradicts their beliefs,
Right.
they often try to just rationalize it away
Yeah.
just to maintain that sense of normalcy.
It's easier to ignore the problem than to confront it,
Exactly.
especially when that problem is like, threatening your livelihood
Right.
and your whole community.
And for years, the potential dangers of Love Canal just remained hidden.
Yeah, it's crazy how long it took for this to come to light.
It is. And then a local reporter named Mike Brown started digging deeper.
Okay, so Mike Brown, reporter for the Niagara Gazette, he was initially skeptical about the whole Love Canal situation
Yeah, he wasn't really buying it.
until he had a couple of encounters that really piqued his interest.
Exactly. First, at a community meeting,
Okay.
this woman breaks down,
Oh, wow.
warning that her town porter could become another Love Canal.
Another Love Canal.
And then he has this conversation with an environmental consultant
Okay.
who ominously warns about future generations facing the consequences.
Hmm. That's pretty ominous.
It is, and these encounters sparked a fire in Brown.
Yeah.
He knew something wasn't right.
So he really starts digging in.
He did.
I bet he faced some serious pushback, though.
I was
Especially from Hooker Chemical.
Oh, yeah.
And the EPA.
Of course, getting information was like pulling teeth.
Jeez.
Hooker Chemical was super evasive.
And the EPA.
Their response was so slow.
Classic.
And then you have all these conflicting reports circulating.
Right.
Some claiming there's minimal risk.
Well, people are getting sick.
Well, and Brown himself.
Yeah.
He experienced stinging eyes and difficulty breathing when he visited the canal.
Oh, wow.
So he was experiencing it firsthand.
Yeah, it's like a scene out of a thriller movie.
Yeah.
This lone reporter uncovering a massive cover-up.
Yeah.
Facing off against these powerful institutions.
But it's a good reminder.
Yeah.
Of the crucial role that investigative journalism plays.
Totally.
Holding power to account.
And Brown's persistence paid off.
It did.
He started interviewing residents, including the Voorhees family, who had been struggling with that black goo for like 2 decades at this point.
Almost 2 decades.
And he found a pattern of illness among other residents, too.
Yes, asthma, miscarriages, birth defects, even cancer.
This is crazy.
It was terrifying.
Brown's reporting brought to light so many individual stories.
Right.
But one woman's experience in particular would become central to the fight for justice at Love Canal.
Right.
Lois Gibbs.
Lois Gibbs.
Young mother.
Yeah.
Her son was attending the 99th Street School.
Oh, no.
Which was built right on top of the former dump site.
Right on top of it.
And her son, Michael, started having seizures.
Oh, gosh.
And she started to suspect there was a connection.
Right to the contaminated land?
That's just a parent's worst nightmare.
It is.
Realizing that your child's health is in jeopardy.
Yeah.
And there's nothing you can do about it.
And to make matters worse, the school board totally dismissed Gibbs's concerns.
What?
They demanded doctor's letters.
Oh, come on.
Before they would even consider transferring Michael to another school.
That's unbelievable.
A clear example of how these bureaucratic systems can sometimes fail to protect the most vulnerable people.
Yeah.
And for Lois Gibbs, this experience was a turning point.
Oh, yeah.
She went from the shy housewife to this fierce advocate.
Wow.
Determined to protect her children and her community.
So she starts circulating a petition.
He does.
Demanding that the school be closed.
Right.
And as she's going door to door, she uncovers this widespread pattern of health issues.
It's no longer just about her son.
Right.
It's about the entire community.
Yeah.
And what's remarkable is how Gibbs's individual act of courage ignited this collective movement.
People power.
People realized they weren't alone in their suffering.
Right.
And they began to organize and demand action from the authorities.
This leads to a pivotal moment in the Love Canal story.
Okay.
This really tense meeting in Albany with the state health commissioner.
Imagine hundreds of residents, many of them sick and afraid, traveling hundreds of miles to confront these people in power.
I can't even imagine.
The commissioner announced that 82 chemical compounds had been identified at Love Canal, including benzene, a known carcinogen.
Oh.
And he ordered the immediate evacuation of pregnant women and children under 2 living closest to the canal.
So not everybody.
No.
I bet that was a moment of mixed emotions for those residents.
It was relief that the danger was finally being acknowledged.
Right.
But also just anger and frustration that the evacuation was so limited.
Right. Like, what about the rest of us?
And Lois Gibbs.
Yeah.
Who had been fighting so hard for her community. She reached her breaking point.
Oh, wow.
She stood up and confronted the commissioner, accusing the state of murdering the residents of Love Canal.
Oh, my God.
And another resident, a woman named Ann Cirillo, she challenged the commissioner about why her 3-year-old son wasn't considered at risk 2 months ago.
Yeah.
But now he suddenly is.
That's a great question.
It is.
It highlights the arbitrariness of the evacuation order.
And that deep mistrust that had developed between the residents and the authorities.
Wow. So the meeting adjourned, and the residents returned to Niagara Falls.
They did.
But the situation was far from resolved.
No.
When Gibbs got home, her street was in total chaos.
Oh, wow.
News of the limited evacuation had sparked panic and outrage.
Yeah.
People were burning their mortgages.
Oh, my God.
And tax bills.
They were convinced their homes were worthless.
Yeah, I mean, can you blame them?
No.
They needed answers.
And they looked to Lois Gibbs for leadership.
Yeah.
And Gibbs, who had never sought the spotlight, She rose to the occasion.
That's awesome.
She addressed the crowd,
Yeah.
urging them to channel their anger into action.
Okay.
She called for a meeting the following night
Okay.
at the 99th Street School,
All right.
a show of force to demand accountability.
Wow, that meeting at the school was a turning point.
It was hundreds of residents packed the auditorium.
Oh, wow.
Their collective anger and fear was palpable.
Yeah.
They bombarded the state health commissioner with questions.
They wanted answers.
They demanded explanations for the limited evacuation, the lack of resources, the uncertainty about their future.
Yeah.
It was a powerful demonstration of community solidarity.
And out of that chaos, something extraordinary emerged.
What's that?
The Love Canal Homeowners Association.
Oh, wow.
They elected Lois Gibbs as their president.
Wow.
This shy housewife thrust into the spotlight became a symbol of their struggle.
That's amazing. It's a testament to the power of grassroots organizing.
Totally.
Ordinary people facing a seemingly insurmountable problem.
Yeah.
United to amplify their voices and demand justice.
And as if in response to their collective action, Congressman John LaFalce arrived at the meeting with some promising news.
Oh, good.
He announced that he had secured $4 million in federal funding.
Wow.
For the cleanup of Love Canal.
That's huge.
A collective sigh of relief swept through the room.
Finally, someone was listening.
But as Gibbs walked home with Beverly Pagan, a biologist who had been following the situation,
a chilling observation brought a new wave of uncertainty.
Uh-oh. They were walking by a manhole, and Pagan stopped.
Okay.
And she was sniffing the air.
Oh, gosh, this doesn't sound good.
It wasn't. She noticed that the distinct chemical odor seemed to intensify around the manholes.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and Pagan, with her scientific background, she started to suspect that the chemicals weren't contained to the canal itself.
Oh.
She theorized that they were migrating underground.
What?
Spreading beyond that initial evacuation zone.
Oh, my gosh. So even more people were at risk than they initially thought.
Potentially, yeah. It was like this invisible threat just expanding its reach.
Right. So that $4 million, that must felt like a really small victory.
It did.
In the face of this new reality.
Yeah, it really highlights the complexities of environmental remediation.
Right.
Cleaning up a toxic waste site isn't as simple as just removing the visible contaminants. Right. You have to consider the long-term impact.
Yeah. The potential for these chemicals to spread through the soil and groundwater.
Yeah.
And the ongoing health risks to the community.
This must have been so disheartening for Gibbs and the other residents.
It was devastating.
Just when they thought some progress was being made.
Right.
They're hit with this new uncertainty and danger.
It shows how environmental activism often involves this series of setbacks and victories.
You take one step forward, 2 steps back kind of thing.
Exactly. It's this long and arduous fight.
Yeah.
Requiring persistence, resilience, and a deep understanding of the science involved.
And in this case, it was Beverly Pagan's expertise that really added this crucial layer of understanding.
Yeah, her observations about the migrating chemicals really pushed the issue further.
Yeah.
Forcing authorities to take a more comprehensive approach to the cleanup.
So what happened? I mean, what was the ultimate outcome of all of this?
Well, the Love Canal disaster ultimately became a catalyst for change.
Okay.
It led to the creation of the Superfund program in 1980, a federal program designed to clean up hazardous waste sites across the country.
That's great.
And it also spurred this wave of environmental activism.
Yeah.
Empowering communities to demand greater accountability from industries and government agencies.
It's amazing how this one community struggle led to such widespread change.
It is.
So Love Canal really serves as the stark reminder that economic progress should never come at the expense of human health and environmental well-being.
Absolutely.
And it's a lesson that resonates even today as we face these new environmental challenges.
Right, like climate change and plastic pollution.
Yeah, for sure. This deep dive into the Love Canal disaster has been truly eye-opening.
It's a powerful story.
We've uncovered the story of corporate negligence, government inaction, and the incredible courage of individuals who fought for their families and their community.
Inspiring.
But it also raises some important questions for all of us.
Yeah, like what are the potential environmental hazards lurking in our own communities?
Yeah.
And what steps can we take to ensure that history doesn't repeat itself?
That's the big question, right? Well, we encourage you to continue exploring this story.
Yes.
And the broader issue of environmental justice.
There are so many resources available online to help you learn more about the challenges we face.
For sure.
And the actions we can take to create a healthier and more sustainable future.
And remember, every voice counts.
It does.
And even small actions can have this ripple effect.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Love Canal disaster.
It was my pleasure.
It's a story that reminds us that the fight for a clean and healthy environment is a fight worth having,
Absolutely.
and that together we can make a difference.